And hey, everybody, welcome today to our weekly podcast. Happy Monday to everybody. We've got Terry here. We've got Mike. And am I saying it right, Shashwat?
That's right. You can call it so
Can you say it again?
you can call him Tosh. So that's fine.
Sash. Okay.
Yeah.
Sash. And Terry, we're going all over the country. It looks like we're going to Cleveland, Ohio area. And so good afternoon, Terry. Good afternoon, Mike. Welcome to our show. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to having some great ideas, tips, education on getting out of California for those people that are interested. Terry, why don't you start us out?
Thanks, David. It's a cloudy day in Central Florida today, but our high is about 80 degrees, so we're very happy with that. And I just want to say they're taking a tree down across the street that got hit by lightning about a month ago that's dying. Which, by the way, I was home. It scared the daylights out of me. I don't mind telling you.
Yeah.
Scared the daylights out of me. When lightning hit that tree, it was incredible. But that's what you get when you're not in California. But I don't have to worry about earthquakes here in Central Florida. I'm far enough away from the coast. I don't really worry about hurricanes. So yeah. But anyway, it's great to have Mike on here and Sasha on here and helping us learn more about Northwest Ohio. Northeast,
Northeast Ohio.
I can always.
I've been to Cleveland. You'd think I'd know where it was in Ohio.
I can always count on Terry to give us a little weather update, and I always appreciate that. So, Mike, welcome to our show, and thank you, Mike. As I bragged earlier on one of the posts, if you guys didn't catch the post I made, I wanted to share that Mike is one of our most active realtors out of the 350 realtors that we have in our group. And Mike is always giving ideas and suggestions. So even if you're not thinking about Cleveland, Mike is a great guy to give out some information on people that are leaving California. So if you don't mind, Mike, maybe you could share where you're at, share your guest name and what he does, and take it away, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. David, Terry, thank you so much for having us. Again, I'm Mike Ferrante. I'm with Century 21, located in Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm a broker. I've been in the business 16 years, and I'm a lifelong Clevelander. So I know everything there is to know about Northeast Ohio. And my friend and client, Shash, is on. And Shash is an investor. He's a business owner, very savvy guy. Back home in India, he was telling me that the government there asks him for advice on how to run things. So I thought he'd have some great input. And he's also one of the guys who he probably still has some money in California, but he was telling me that he's transplanting some of his money to Northeast Ohio. And I'm hoping he'll share some of that story today.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And before we get too deep into this, every week we go to a different city for all of our Leaving California members. And Terry he actually said this in one of our podcasts, that he's been to all 50 states except for Montana. So Terry, do you have experience up here in this area?
I've been to Cleveland, Ohio. I've been through the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is right there on the lake. I stayed at the Hilton, which is right across the street from the stadium where the Browns play. It was beautiful. I got to tell you, downtown Cleveland was great. It was when I was there, the weather was nice. It wasn't the middle of winter, but the weather was nice. It wasn't like you see in San Francisco where there's homeless people everywhere. There were people out, families out. I really enjoyed Cleveland. And it's it was just a lot of fun to spend some time there. And again, I really enjoyed the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was a lot of fun too.
Well, back to you, Mike. I haven't been there, but I will honestly say, even though I've never been there, I've never heard anyone say that it's not a good place. So I mean, I imagine the only things I've heard is that it's a really great place to visit. I've heard that it's beautiful up there. So if you could maybe give a little background on Shash and let us know what he's going to be sharing today and introduce him, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me get this out of the way, guys. So Cleveland over the years has had a little bit of a bad rap. Back in the day, the river caught on fire, Rust Belt City, but it has undergone kind of a renaissance. So definitely at some point, I would love to share a little bit more about Cleveland. But Terry, you're spot on. It's not like it used to be. Cleveland is sort of an up and coming city, and talk about affordability. But affordability is a great segue to our mutual guest here today. Shash came to me as a client, referred from a good friend of mine in San Diego. And, he's been all over the world. And I think he brings a really unique perspective to investing in real estate. And so I invited him here to share some of his story. And he also brings an international flair to the show for you guys. So now you can say, we're on at least two continents now. But Josh, why don't you talk for a second and tell the guys a little bit about what you're doing?
Hi, as I said, thanks a lot for inviting me, David, Mike, and hello, Terry. Just a brief, I used to work for government of Maryland's Water Commission, so basically helping government become more efficient. And that was until 2017. And in 2017, I retired from a typical 9-to-5 job. I have a family business in India, which was into a real estate and a lot of farming. And so I moved back for 2 to 3 years to handle that, because after my father passed away, I inherited some of that business. But then after pandemic, I started feeling that I need to diversify my investments and also my portfolio to make sure that my funds are safe and it's growing. So one of the reasons why I decided was, of course, to have better returns, and a lot was talked about California. So here we go. I went to San Diego and invested into a business which was more related to tourism. So it was a rental car company. It was typically like an Airbnb for cars. Again, they promised very good returns, and no doubt about it. But as things are, if I really started looking, and so invested there for 3 years, 2.5 years to be precise. And when I started looking at the finances, like getting a deep dive into it, I started feeling that the picture is not as rosy in terms of returns. So, there were definitely higher costs of operations because everything is more expensive, and the returns are not that great. And probably because of tax and everything else, eventually it isn't really promising enough. So it looks great on the onset, but when you dig deep into it, then definitely you'll see the story is much darker and different than how you interpret initially. And from there on, I thought of venturing into more like a real estate investment. And to be honest with you, I literally invested a lot of time on Zillow to see what could be the best possible entry point for me. My reasons and my logic was simple. I wanted a low entry barrier, so I could start something even for like 50 grand, and I can start with low risks. And I felt like the returns in terms of equities, appraisal in the house values, and also rents, all combination. If I look at that from an Excel, do a calculation, Cleveland really spot them up in the terms of, because it has a very good healthcare industry, which really caters to a lot of people coming from all over the world. It also has some good schools there, like universities. And then there are certain areas which are really doing well. So contrary to popular notion that Cleveland or the areas in and around Cleveland is a very inexpensive, there's a very good combination, which was very unique. There were like a multi-million-dollar houses, and there were houses for $100,000. And then there's everything else in that mix. So for somebody like me who is just starting, it gave a very interesting, insight into that. Oh, I can start for less, and then I can transition. And it became more logical to me, because then I've been to Cleveland now 4 times in the last 12 months. I met Mike and his team, and they have been super helpful. I have also invested in 2 multifamily houses, put in an offer for third one, didn't work out, but definitely bought 2 in the last 6 months. And I feel like, I can gradually progress. So I feel like today, if my entry point is around $200,000, I know for sure that I don't have to look for newer market for better returns when I consolidate. So if I have to go for like $500,000 houses or $1 million houses at some point, knock on the wood, I believe that I can continue. So the relationships which I'm building with realtors, contractors, property managers, Airbnb co-hosts, and so on and so forth, would actually help me in the long run, even if I have to expand. And that's a very great mix for me personally. And just to end my brief intro, I'm trying to do a couple of things. So I'm also going into a long-term rentals, which is like a typical tenant, but I'm also experimenting with one of my multifamily into an Airbnb. So we are trying. We have not yet started, but that house has been furnished, and we're trying to see if we can get better returns. So yeah, that's about it. And feel free to ask if you have any questions.
Let me make one comment. I just want to tell everybody that's listening, you did not hear him wrong. You literally can come here with $100,000 and buy an investment property. You could buy multifamily for 100 to 200, and your rates of return are literally going to be 8 to 12%. And I'm not exaggerating. That's a real deal. So my plea is that everybody who has investment properties, if they're not performing for you, 1031 those bad boys, bring that cash here and invest it where you actually make some money on it.
Well, Mike, since you brought up 1031, and thank you guys for sharing price points, because that's always part of our show. What is a 1031? Can you share with the audience so they know what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I can give the brief overview. I'm far from an expert. When you do a 1031, you do bring in someone who specializes in that. But put quite simply, it's a way to sell a property and defer your capital gain. So essentially, you're rolling that money into another investment, and as long as you reinvest all of that money, it is in the new investment, and you don't pay capital gains tax until you sell that property, unless you 1031 again. You can keep on doing that. But when you actually receive the money in your checking account, that's when you'll pay capital gains tax.
So Terry, this sounds
David, just real quick,
yeah,
David, that's Mike, that's when you sell an investment property and go to an investment property. If you sell your owner occupied, you get the exemptions if you've been in the property a certain amount of time, but we're talking investment property to investment property for a 1031 exchange. Yeah.
And also, Terry, that sounds like it was Florida 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, Las Vegas 12 years ago, and California about 75 years ago with those prices, right? Terry, can you talk about pricing?
Florida.
Talk about pricing.
Yeah, it's not Florida anymore. But Mike, let me ask you this, because those are great price points. And now are the rents going to, is it 1%? I know that was the rule of thumb years ago when I was in the investment world. You try and get 1% of your purchase price per month in rent. Does that fit for what you're describing?
Yeah. So the 1% rule, and those investors listening will know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those who don't know what it is, the 1% rule is sort of our quick litmus test. So for example, if you're buying something for $100,000, 1% of that is $1,000, and we want to see the rent over 1%, so over $1,000. And I can tell you that anything that we're buying here in Northeast Ohio, Cleveland, Akron, Lorain, Youngstown, everything that we're going to recommend is going to beat that 1% rule. And depending on your appetite for risk, it could blow it out of the water. So, I've got investment properties that I'm making 15, 16% on, naturally I bought those over the years. But yeah, the 1% rule is a good, quick litmus test, and we will blow that away here in Northeast Ohio.
So, Mike, just a quick point here. I'll just give you my example. I just recently, 2 months back, bought a multifamily in Cleveland Heights for 140. The prices have gone up a bit, but let's say even at 150. My current rents are 923 for one property down unit and 802, and the rent is like far under the market. I'm gonna easily make $2,000 in rent, and tenant pays for everything. So all I'm paying for water, which is $100. And that's about it, and property taxes and insurance. So technically, for an investment worth 150, I am going to make around $2,000 a month. So that's for you. That's like a live example, just a month back or 2 months back, which Mike helped me buy.
That's great.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, let's switch gears a little bit. We can get back into investing, but now people that have tuned in to your area in your neck of the woods, let's go ahead and share a little bit more. Obviously, that is a huge advantage. You definitely have the lowest price point out of the 20 people that we've interviewed so far with our weekly podcast. But let's talk about the city, what the attractions, the fun things to do, talk about the weather. Just go ahead and give us a complete rundown. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, definitely when people think of where to retire to, I know for a fact that Cleveland is not the first place that comes to mind, but I would argue that it should be at least on the radar. The first objection that I usually hear, David, is the weather. So, yes, it's true that the winters here can be pretty tough. We're right on Lake Erie, which of course, when that wind blows across from Canada, it picks up the moisture, and over the winters we do get snow. Now, if you're one of those folks that loves your winter sports, we've got ski slopes within an hour. You've got your choice of places to ski in the winter. You have more parks and golf courses here than probably most other states would have. It's just a beautiful green, lush area in spring, summer, and fall. And in the winter, yeah, there's a lot of people who, Terry, you see them, you know what you call them down there in Florida. What do you call the people that come down?
The snowbirds.
The snowbirds, that's right. But it's so affordable to live here in Northeast Ohio that you can afford 2 homes. If you can afford the second home in Florida, or even if you just want to go rent for 3 months, that's what my mother-in-law does. So she owns a home up here. She owns a condo, and she goes down to Florida for 3 to 4 months every year and has sort of a dual residency. But the other stuff here, like Shash mentioned, there is really thriving industry here in Northeast Ohio. It's no longer a Rust Belt city. Like he said, the healthcare is awesome. The King of Jordan flew here about 15 years ago for, it was either cancer or heart treatment. He came to the Cleveland Clinic, which is of course based here in Cleveland. We have another hospital, University Hospital. So the healthcare here is second to none. Shash also mentioned the universities. I'm a graduate of Case Western Reserve University, where I did my MBA. But within a stone's throw of Cleveland, you've got about a dozen really great colleges, smaller liberal arts colleges. You've got law school. You've got the Cleveland State Law School, which is a very prestigious school. And as far as recreation, sometimes we shy away from talking about the Browns, although they did win on Sunday. We've got 3 sports teams. As Terry said, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And guys, Google this one. Google Cedar Point. This is the best amusement park in the United States if you like roller coasters. I'm kind of a big baby, so I shy away from that. But there's so much to do here. And I mentioned Lake Erie, the best walleye fishing lake in the world. And I would push back on anyone who wants to contact me, and I will put Lake Erie up against any other lake. It is the best fishing lake in the world. All this recreation, so much to do, dining, restaurants, it's all here. The one thing we lack, David, and I'm going to be honest, I'm a very transparent guy. We don't have enough vegetarian dining, which is kind of a bummer for me.
Got it. Hey, you did share a little bit about the winters being cold, and I have been to Chicago a few times, and I know what you're talking about when you're talking about it being cold off that lake. But talk about the other seasons, talk about rain, how much snow do you get? And if somebody was thinking about that area, to really give them a snapshot of the weather.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, 3 seasons out of the year are absolutely gorgeous here. The spring can be a little bit of a transition from winter. It gets windy, great kite flying season, but everything's blooming. It's so green and lush here. I always say that in our yard, the landscaping we have is like nature's fireworks. You've got the daffodils and then the tulips and just everything blooming here. It's just a beautiful time of year. There's a suburb called Chagrin Falls that has a Blossom Time Festival. Beautiful little suburb. Google it, Chagrin Falls. You walk down this Main Street area with all these little shops, and the cherry trees are blooming, and it's something out of a postcard. And then our summers are pretty mild. Terry, a lot of people from Florida come to Cleveland for the summers because it gets unbearably hot. And yes, we get a little humidity. There's some days where you got to crank that AC, but frankly, you could open your windows, put on your ceiling fans, and enjoy the summers too. So it's beautiful. There's all the parks and golf courses, so much recreation here. And then the fall is probably, I would argue, one of the most beautiful places in the United States. When you see the leaves turning, it's just the reds and the yellows. There are people that come to Central Ohio, which is just an hour drive for us. We go down to Hocking Hills, and there's these cute little bed and breakfasts and cabins you can rent, and there's parks. and it is just an amazing, beautiful scenery. People come from all over just to see the leaves turn here. Now, in winter, like you said, David, you wanted me to share the bad news too. We can get anywhere from 50 to 150 inches of snow. So if you are not tolerant of that, it's just like Chicago, Buffalo, same type of place. Now, last year we were under 50 inches of snow, if I'm not mistaken, but it does get cold. You know, here in Cleveland, we worry about things like pipes freezing, which, you know, you guys aren't even thinking about that. I just had a guy today, an investor of mine from Georgia. He said, well, Mike, in the wintertime, if my house is vacant, why don't I just turn off the heat? And I'm like, well, not really an option here. You got to keep your house at least, you know, like 60 degrees.
Yeah. And then you did touch on education. It sounds like you guys have a lot of education options. That's usually a big concern. If you have anything else to add about education, and then we always like to find out about transportation. How far away are you from the airport? Do you have LA or San Francisco traffic in your community?
Yeah, so we always say that Cleveland, Akron, you know, sister cities here, we have all of the big city amenities without many of the big city problems. So David, like you said, look, there's homeless in every major city. There's going to be some, but it's not like you mentioned. We are just minutes to the airport. So Cleveland Hopkins Airport is an international airport. It's not a hub, but it's still pretty easy to get just about anywhere. I'll be coming to see you in Vegas here in a couple months.
I know. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, yeah, same here. But everybody owns a car, so easy to have a car here. Here in the Midwest, they say that we like to measure things in minutes. So my mother lives all the way across town. You know, in LA, I bet it would take 3 hours to go see her. She lives, if I'm going to guess, I don't even know how many miles. I'm going to say 50 miles away. That's a 45-minute ride, and I'm not going 80. So you can get from one side of town to the other easily. If you prefer public transportation, we have an amazing public transportation system. So again, many of the amenities of big cities. We guess what city, David, has the second biggest theater district in the world, to only second to New York City?
Nashville.
It's Cleveland.
Oh,
Cleveland.
Cleveland
has
I figured that was a trick question. Yeah.
Come on, it's a Cleveland podcast, right? So seriously, like our theater district is absolutely incredible, only second to New York City. And so like when people say, oh, there's nothing going on in Cleveland, it's just a matter of how much time do you have? Like I could not show you everything Cleveland has to offer. You asked about schools. We've got incredible schools and museums. Some of the high schools here, there's Solon is the city my office is in, #1 school district in all of Ohio, like 5 years running now. And then when you talk secondary education, there's Baldwin Wallace College. And then if you want inexpensive education, because I know one of the things that's driving people out of California is the cost of things, you've got Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, all of these state universities that are really good educations, but very inexpensive. I think we paid like 11 grand a year for our daughter to go to Kent State. And then all these private schools like Baldwin Wallace, Lake Erie College. I went to Heidelberg, which is up here in Ohio. That's Northwest Ohio, but so much to offer here.
And Terry, if I'm trying to get at everything, boy, Mike, you're an expert, I can tell. And you know, every week after week after week, I say the same thing. You just feel it when we talk to our premier realtors from our 350 realtors in the leading California groups. You can just feel it. You know that they're passionate about helping people. This isn't about making a sale. This is about actually helping someone. And our motto for all of our realtors that we all talk all the time. I mean, we have a motto, and that is that we treat our clients like family, and they become family members to us. And we really, really take this role seriously. So Terry, what am I missing about this area?
Well, yeah, Mike, you were very thorough. And Shash, I'd like to ask you, how do you decide what to make an Airbnb and what to make a long-term rental? And then how did you get educated about having an Airbnb?
So, of course, I have a network of friends in other parts, specifically in San Diego, who actually run Airbnbs in San Diego. And I have run Airbnb when I used to work in Maryland as my side hustle in DC. So I have had experience with Airbnbs, and I know the pros and cons. The fact was like I had invested for my house furnishings in DC, and I always knew that probably at some point I'm going to use them. So I put them into the storage, and when I invested into a property, I brought them back from DC, refurnished it, because I did not want to. And the prices of furnishings have gone up quite a lot. So I knew that the market price is rising. It makes more sense to keep them than to discard it. Now, as far as decisions, I think one of the critical decisions is always like if it's close to the hospital. So Airbnbs and short-term and medium-term rentals, they cater a lot to travel nurses. So if there is a hospital within like, say, 15 minutes drive, and Cleveland is not like a great big city, or it's done like mired with traffic jam, but for most part, if it's in like a 5-mile distance from your house, it can be a very good candidate for an Airbnb. But then there are two important things. One, it is very, very important that the neighborhood is safe and people who are visiting do not feel threatened by, like any unforeseen situation. And the second thing is like the accessibility of that neighborhood has to be. So it has to be much more safer, better lit, stuff like that. And people feel comfortable, and there are shops and restaurants and places to hang around nearby. So that's a decision which is important for a lot of people. And as we always say that location, location, location. So with respect to a short-term or a medium-term rental, prime neighborhoods or decent neighborhoods close to hospitals with restaurants and other places to hang around is the best way. So the west side is coming up quite a bit, places like Cleveland Heights, and some places even in the east side, like Euclid, which is closer to some of the hospitals there. That's great. And one final point is there are a lot of branches of university hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic campuses. So it's not just one hospital in Cleveland. They're like a branch of hospitals and the multitude of hospitals. And they're getting sometimes, I believe the number, some of them, like 50 to 60,000 nurses coming from different parts of the country for like 3 to 4 months all around the year. So there's a lot of tourism. I mean, so this can be even more. I might be understating the numbers.
Shash, do you have an experience? Shash, do you have an experience in being in California?
Yes, I personally have not lived in per se, but I was frequent. So right now I live in Vancouver, which again is a very, 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 I think one of the most expensive places to stay because it's crazy. 1-bedroom condo, $1.5 million Canadian dollars. So, but yes, I have been a frequent visitor to San Diego for sure. And so I don't think that the maths don't work out, especially in real estate. I don't know why people are investing in California. There will never be returns.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you on that. And Mike, let's switch gears again a little bit. Let's talk to all of our listeners. Every week we like to share ideas. We share success stories. I don't know if you happen to have a favorite story of somebody that relocated from California. It doesn't have to be California. It could be they relocated from anywhere, but maybe you could share a story when somebody made a relocation, they came to your community, and now you could share with them what that was like. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about, because I want everyone to know that this weekly show is not just about moving to one specific place, but rather having 2 or 3 cities that really interest you. Maybe getting on a plane and going and traveling there and seeing, you go to that community and you have to say to yourself, can I really see myself living here? So if you have, I know that you've been doing this a long time, and if you could share, because we have a lot of listeners and people that watch these shows, they're really on the fence. They don't know if they should leave or if they should stay. So maybe you could share some ideas on that.
Yeah, sure thing. That's a great question. Thanks, David. So yeah, lots of stories. It's hard to pick a favorite one. I'll tell you this, that many of the people I've helped relocate came here for a job. So like Shash was saying, there's a lot going on in Cleveland, and I think that these people that come here, the success story for me is, for example, people who've come from Europe. I've had people relocate from Germany, from England, and when they get here, they say, wow, I can't believe how affordable everything is. And Terry, I know you're probably shaking your head saying, yeah, people aren't saying that in California, but your money goes so far here that it's really a pleasant surprise. So it's not just real estate, but gasoline, recreation. You know, I talked about going downtown and parking for seeing a show at the theater. You know, you're not paying hundreds of dollars for theater tickets, and you're literally parking downtown for $10, you know, maybe 20 if you're getting the really premium parking spot. So, you know, you come here with your California money, with your Europe money, your New York City money, and you live like a king or queen. So that's really my favorite success story. Watching my guys from Germany come here when they came for, you know, to relocate for a certain company, and they just couldn't believe all the land you get. You know, oh my gosh, you know, they call them gardens. The backyard is the garden. They're like, and at first I had a little trouble with that. I'm like, oh, what a beautiful garden. And I'm looking around going, there's not a garden here. What are you talking? And it's but the land, you get so much space, and it's just everything's so green and beautiful, except in winter. But if you pick up snow skiing, I've got any number of places you can go snow skiing.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. And then secondly, the second part of my question, I usually ask these separately, but the second part is for somebody that's just, and you as an expert with helping people relocate. And so somebody's really thinking about it. They don't really have a plan. They just know that things are bad and they're not happy. They believe that there's a better life, and they've been paying attention to our site. They've been reading all these success stories that we have on there, and they're like, you know, I'm really thinking, what would you say to somebody that's sitting there in their chair right now, and they're like, you know, I'm not really sure. I don't know if I should take this leap. I kind of don't like change. I think maybe I'll just stay, but they're really kind of 50-50. What would you say to them, and what kind of advice would you give?
Easy answer, David. Just come here. Come here for a visit. I mean, why would you uproot yourself and just move somewhere without testing the waters? And the good news is that it's really inexpensive to do so. So come here for a weekend, come here for a week, rent one of Shasha's short-term or midterm rentals. We literally can get you here for a few $1,000s, including airfare. Just come check it out, you know, and I'll be your personal tour guide. Just, you know, let me know when you're coming, and we'll show you around, show you all there is to do. And, you know, you could also rent something here. So even if people, you know, David, like you said, we're not all about making sales here. That's not why we do this. We're here to help people. And, you know, frankly, if you're not sure, come here and rent something for 6 months. And if you hate it, move back, go to plan B.
That's a really good point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have never heard anybody, any client or any member of our groups that has ever said, I went and met with one of Terry Gilliam's premier realtors, and the very first thing, I got off the plane and I met them at the airport, and they said, let's go buy a house. Every one of them, just like you just said, says, hey, come to my community. Let me show you around. I want to take you to some parks. I want to show you the restaurant district. I want to show you what this city is all about. They don't even talk about buying a house. And I think, Terry, that's what sets our realtors apart from other realtors and having bad experiences. And I'm really passionate about this, because I really think that our members should be using our network. Terry's worked, a lot of people don't know this, but Terry's worked on this for over 5 years now. He's put together people like me, people like Mike, and 348 other ones. So Terry, go ahead and share a little bit more about that. But you know my passion on that, Terry.
Yeah, that's part of the explanation I have with realtors when they join the group as one of our preferred realtors is, look, these are people who are moving because most of them because they have to, not because they want to. Of course, California is a beautiful place to live, whether it's they don't agree with the politics, they don't like the cost of living, or a job transfer, as Mike alluded to. They need to get to know, be comfortable with an area. And some people do rent. Some people do rent for a specific amount of time and figure out where they want to live after that. But by all means, our realtors understand that this is a process. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And their goal is to make people feel comfortable with their decision to move to a place and why they should move there. Not just, hey, and that's why really you'll see listings in the group. But I tell people, you know, we get, I'm telling you, it's a dozen listings a day people try and submit to the group. And I'm like, look, posting a $300,000 listing in a town no one's ever heard of is not going to convince them to move there. They need to know about the area. So
Right.
I do have a realtor partner say, hey, I just want to show you what 400,000 buys you in X or 800,000 buys you in X, just to compare. But for the most part, we don't just have people just throw listings in the group, because it's a waste of time. It's not gonna convince anybody. Oh, honey, let's sell our house and we're gonna move to South
Right,
Choppy, Florida.
right.
I never heard of it, but that's where we're moving. And there is a South Choppy, Florida, by the way.
Yeah, that's a great advice, Terry. And by the way, again, I had posted earlier today on my post, and I did tell everybody that we have a handbook that Terry and I have been working on for the last few months. It's not quite done yet, but in the handbook that we've created, it has a lot of planning and stages and things that you need to know. And it may have some things in the book that you didn't think of. And it's really important for us that you kind of start there and you take a snapshot of the whole process. And planning is going to be so important for you that you have an actual plan to get to your end goal. And it's not going to happen tomorrow, like Terry just kind of alluded to, but it's going to be a process. And the first process is really to go check out some different areas in the country where you're really thinking about living. And I really want you to ask yourself, can I see myself living there? It's kind of like when we do get to that next step. And to be honest, some of our realtors, we don't ever make it to that step. We hear stories all the time where they go and check out a community and they go, this is just not for me. I can't see myself living here. So they don't even make it to a house, but it's the same process. When you walk into that house that you're going to purchase, you have to say, and I tell my clients, I have clients that say this, Mike, I know you probably do too, where they walk in and they go, we could probably make this work. I'm like, nope, that's not your house. We got to go find. I don't want you saying that. And I don't care if you're doing a rental or if you're buying a house. So anyway, don't get me started, Mike. I'm going to cut myself off. We're getting close to the time goes by so fast every week. But Mike, if you have some other things you want to share, and Josh, if you have some, we're going to be wrapping up here in the next 5 minutes or so. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, again, just thanks for having me on, David. And my offer is sincere. I think that, David, what you said is 100% true. You really need to come and immerse yourself in an area. So if you guys are coming, I've got the QR code right there. Just drop an appointment on my calendar. I'm happy to show people around when they come here. If nothing else, I'll take you to a couple of the best restaurants in town. And, if you're into sports, we got that going on too. But honestly, just come here, immerse yourself in Northeast Ohio for a while, see what it has to offer. I'm a great host.
It's funny, Mike, you say that. So me and Terry may hold you to that, because me and Terry talk about this often. I told Terry, I said, instead of doing these live podcasts, let's just go see these places. And I eventually, that would be my goal, is to actually go and see the communities that we're talking about. But I'm not able to do that at this point. Maybe someday I will. But, just this is the second best option, where a licensed realtor, a passionate realtor, somebody that cares about his clients, can share exactly. And let's face it, if we go back and look on what Mike said, he didn't just tell you everything that's great. He even mentioned some of the things that people are like, yeah, I can't really handle that. And I think that that's really, really important. So, Josh, do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we close up our podcast?
Yeah, sure. For the sake of transparency and as an advice to future investors, if you're looking to invest into a single family, multifamily, I think you have to be wary, and this is something which I would really press upon, about the property managers and the contractors. This is like a very critical point, and this can make or break your investments. So do invest more time in vetting the people whom you are trusting to run your properties, like manage your properties or do contracting work, because that's what I have observed. And this happens not only in Cleveland, all across US, but because, one bad experience can leave a bad taste of in your mouth, and it would have a spiraling effect on your whole investment decisions. And you may do that blunder without even realizing that. So you trust somebody on face value, but you did not do enough vetting and research to find the right kind of people to manage your property or do contracting job for you. And that is very, very critical. And I do think, Mike, you said this is as an investor, this is also I would like to say that I do feel that a lot of these realtors in Cleveland, and probably at some point as a corporation or as a combined unit, they should also think of having a better experience of property management in place, like better vetting, better listings, siphon out the bad ones from the good ones. That would encourage a lot of investors to come in, because that's the only problem area which I feel right now. I don't think the issue is in terms of returns or tenants. There are some bad stories, but for most part, I don't see that's a problem. I think the problem goes more with the property management and the contracting jobs.
Thank you for that, Josh. That's great advice. And Terry, in closing, anything else that you'd like to add?
I just think people should check out Northeast Ohio. Great people. And I can't say it again. I mean, I'm going to say it again. Great. I loved downtown Cleveland. Enjoyed my time there. And I was there for business, but it was great. And go spend some time there and enjoy it. And maybe you don't want to go in January, not necessarily recommended, unless you want to see what it's like in January. But no, it's a great town. And by all means, reach out to Mike. Reach out to Mike, schedule time with him. I know he's happy to have a conversation on the phone with you. He's also happy to tour you around. But let's remember, we've talked about Cleveland, but there are some amazing suburbs all around Cleveland that are great place. You can have anything you want. As Mike said, 100,000 up to well over $1 million, I'm sure, in a gated golf course community. And so you can have whatever you want there. So, go enjoy life in America, as we say, out of California.
And Mike, we see your sign back there, but I'm not sure that I can see it clearly. So what I'd like you to do now, Mike, is please, for any of our listeners that want to get some more information about your community, could you please share your phone number and your email as well?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I always tell people the easiest way to reach us is 21mike.com, which is our website. And that's where that QR code goes as well. We have a button there. You schedule an appointment, or if you want to do the old fashioned, pick up the phone and call us. It's 216-373-7727.
All right. And again, I'm David Berry. I'm the National Relocation Director. Me and Terry do offer free consultations. If you're trying to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me at 702-374-1771. My email is lasvegas@davidberryrealtor.com. I would love to hear from you. I can get Terry, I can get myself, we can do a consultation. If you have specific communities, that's kind of what my job is I try to put people together and have the best experience. And to be honest, it's a challenging time and it's a stressful time, but it doesn't have to be. If you have all these experts that we have put together, we can make the experience really, really good for you. So thank you all for listening. Thanks for joining us today. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.